now that I'm approaching again stage weight, I'm starting to see my physique in its true light. Now that I got a decent amount of body fat off of me, and I think from my 2014 season at the age of 43, I was like, okay, can I actually improve moving forward? And now here I am 3 years later at the age of 46, starting to see some decent level conditioning. I do think that I've made some strides, particularly in my delt development. Possibly have built a little bit more muscle, is really really encouraging, and it's really making me pretty happy. So just to kind of go over how my delt training has been, since 2011, basically since the age of 40. Just to give you some context first, so leading up to that 2011 season, um, basically it was overhead press and side laterals were my core movements. Those when I got my ass handed to me by Cleveland Thomas and company at the 2011 Yorton Cup. That being my first ever world championship, I felt like, okay, I belonged and actually was comparable in some body parts. But when it came to delts, I just felt like I got smashed. I was like, whoa, okay, that's one body part where it really was very noticeable that I needed to really kind of bring up. How do I, improve my delts? Being that, we got to realize that the age of 40, and at that point, I was probably training right around 26 years. So I was like, okay, what else can I do? After 26 years of training, how much can I actually improve a body part? So, I just figured, okay, I can't keep doing the same thing. I have to do something different. So the question is, what was I going to do different? And at the time, I knew side laterals, that, the leverages on a side lateral aren't that advantageous. You can only do so much with a weight, away from your body. And for years leading up to that point, it was in the neighborhood of 20 to 35 pound dumbbells for years. So I knew the likelihood of me trying to increase the load on that probably not going to happen. Sure, I can maybe increase the sets, increase the reps. That's other viable options to try to make improvements. But my thought was, if I basically put all my stock or all my eggs into the overhead press, because my thought and my feeling was, okay, the leverages are far better. You can definitely lift a lot more over your head than you can out to your side. So I was like, okay, let me toss out the side laterals and just put all my energy, all my eggs into the overhead press and try to make an effort to really improve that lift. So once that off season started, I started using 531 for all my main lifts, my bench, my squat, my deadlift, and my overhead press. So I was following 531, following that scheme. I was also incorporating back offsets to get some added volume. And I got really, really strong. Like I hit PRs like in 2012, 2013. I was regularly, overhead pressing with 200 pounds, for right around 3 to 4 reps, on a regular basis. And the most I did, I actually hit a PR of 225.
Yeah.
I knew that, with that performance moving up, in a sense, the volume was going up because the load was going up from the load, but also from doing more sets. So it was more volume than I was accustomed to doing with overhead press. And I knew that, yeah, that's going to translate back into my delts. Okay, this game plan is definitely working. But good things come to an end. Almost everything we do in life, has a beginning and has an end, and sometimes that end comes a little too prematurely, and that's exactly what happened to me. So basically, after I'd hit that PR, I just kept that intensity going, and that's one thing about the way I used to train, prior to, I would say that was, once I injured myself with the overhead press, leading up to that, I was still, the ego was getting the best of me at times. Whereas thereafter, after that injury with the overhead press, my right shoulder, I injured it. And then I tore my calf in 2013. That calf tear cemented, the way in which I train, is like as far as putting the ego on the back burner and really letting the maturity level come through, like the maturity start guiding my training and not the ego. So basically, overhead press, the barbell overhead press is basically dead in the water. So, at that point, I was like, okay, now what? What am I going to do? Overhead pressing with the barbell really isn't the most ideal. And basically, that's where my fellow coach, Alberto Nunez, came into play, and he said, hey, Jeff, why don't you try the one-arm dumbbell overhead press? And basically he taught me how to do it. And the rationale for it was basically because a barbell, I was pretty restricted. You can't really move a barbell around, so it was putting a lot of stress on my right shoulder. Eventually my right shoulder didn't like it, and I got an injury. And once I allowed some healing time, started working with the one-arm dumbbell overhead press, it allowed me to kind of put that dumbbell and maneuver that dumbbell wherever I needed it to be to really kind of lessen the pain. So it was a really good call. And the emphasis with that new movement wasn't so much, hey, I need to really try to work on the loads and get these loads worked up as fast as possible. Like, the priority wasn't about the load, it was more about the technique and really just focusing on the form. And as I got better with the form, better with the lift, then I started to ramp up the loads. If things were really clean, really on lock, then I'll go ahead and try to bump the loads up 5 pounds. If not, I would just rinse and repeat it. So basically, that was kind of the basis of the progression. Of course, I auto-regulated loads whenever I needed to. So if I had a bad workout or I wasn't feeling good or whatever, I just lower the loads down. But I never really got ahead of myself with loads on this movement. It was more about the technique and the form. And, so here we are, in 2017. Now I'm 3 years later with this movement as my bread and butter, my only delt movement. And I think the proof is in the pudding that it's worked for me. Like, this tool, this delt exercise is a tool. The way I look at it, it's a tool in my toolbox that I was able to use to keep my progress going. So not to say that the one-arm dumbbell overhead press is superior to, let's say, the barbell overhead press, but for the past 3 years, for me, in my situation, for the context involved, it is the best movement for me. And what's really really nice to say as well is that I really do enjoy that movement. So I'm still enjoying my training. So the things that I've learned over through my 40s is that, one, I can keep progressing, and then two, I'm really good at picking out which tool to use in order to keep my progress going, to keep my journey going. And I'm also, really proud to say that, I'm really open-minded to allow others to still help me. Like if it wasn't for Alberto, offering that movement to me, who knows? I might have made some bad mistakes. So keeping, being humble, keeping an open mind, willing to continue to learn, I think is, in a sense, is kept me from being a dinosaur. So hope this helps, guys, and just remember that. My thought is this, that this sport is not black or white. We all have toolboxes, and I think the goal should be to learn to use as many tools as possible. Fill your toolbox up. That way, at any given point in time, you know which tool to pull out and use to keep your journey going. So other than that, hope you guys enjoy this one, and we'll see you on the next one.